And here's the truth they bid. Some belts held 3 pounds of iron that cut skin and left red marks. You can hear each step clink, you can feel the scrape. 40 nights locked, and you still weren't safe, because someone sold your fear, and that's where it gets worse. You hear the clink with every step. Surviving metal. Belts can weigh roughly 3 pounds, enough to cut skin and leave bright red marks where iron bites into flesh. Imagine linen padding, soaked with sweat, a rim that rubs raw, and the cold shock of metal against your hip as you shuffle down a stone corridor, candlelight jittering on the walls. Imagine nobles sleeping in colder rooms, peasants huddling by hearths. It feels savage and plausible, but here's the twist. Many of the famous medieval examples are 19th century inventions, not locked ever. Someone sold your fear, not medieval. Victorian showmen polished and paraded iron waste pieces in cabinets of curiosities and at fairgrounds, and the public loved a lurid Middle Ages. Museums later hung them under gaslight labels, and the image lodged in the popular imagination. The human angle is messy. People wanted control proof and an object to point at when moral panic flared. For sellers, that panic was profit. For women, the reality would have been humiliation, chafing skin, and the constant small terror of rust and sores. Less a dramatic locked ritual, more slow injury. Yet the story stuck because it answered a deeper question about sex and power. You can picture a husband leaving for war and a key turning in iron, but the paperwork, the household accounts, and the laws offer no receipts for that image. If crusaders didn't lock wives, where did the obsession start? And you picture knights snapping, shut a lock before sailing east, a final metallic click echoing off the cold stone of the keep. It's a great picture. It isn't history. Surviving medieval law codes never prescribe iron underwear. Chronicles that hint at such devices read like satire or moral allegory, not inventories or household accounts. Not true. What you have instead is a rumor that loved good drama. Stories of jealous crusaders fit a neat narrative. Men go off to fight, women must be guarded. Iron proves the point. That's why the idea traveled so fast. Fear tastes better than nuance. You can smell smoke, candle grease, and worry in every lordly chamber. Peasants froze in straw while nobles argued about lineage and salvation. Bad idea. Imagine the scene: a flickering candle, a steward's ledger, a lord more worried about heirs than honor. He hires watchers, locks doors, pays servants. Practical, visible, cheap. No one bothered to pay for clumsy, rusting waste cages that would rot, chafe, and require a key every time nature called. The human angle is simple. People needed control, and metaphors to explain it. A chastity belt makes that control literal, theatrical, and terrifying. It lets us picture power you can clasp shut. It flatters an idea of medieval men as obsessively possessive, and later audiences gobbled that image. But the real question creeps in under the theatrics and the jokes. Could medieval metalworkers actually make a wearable prison for skin without turning the wearer into a wound? You sit in a late medieval smithy, heat licking your face. Small warded locks clink on the bench. Riveted plates glint in sparks. A leather strip soaks in tallow nearby, ready to stiffen. Technically, a craftsman could make a wearable iron frame here. It would be heavy, uncomfortable, and terrible for skin. Bodies sweat, iron rusts, edges bite into soft flesh. Keeping it clean would be a slow, constant punishment. Smoke curls through the smithy, you breathe heat and iron tang. Not romantic. Servants envy nobles who never wear such torture. Modern insomnia has nothing on that nightly grinding. Imagine walking through the market wearing that contraption all day. Every step sends metallic clanks against cobbles and your bones. Peeing becomes a tactical operation, not a private relief. You must aim through a narrow slot. Linen padding soaks instantly. Warm rust, tinted moisture pools against tender skin and festers. Rivets and buckles chafe until flesh breaks and weeps. You oil hinges, stuff cotton for padding, and pray it helps. Oil delays rust, but cannot prevent salt, sweat, and rot. Locksmiths had rudimentary warded locks. Keys were small but effective. A key maker could craft one, and a thief could pick it. Control ultimately belonged to whoever guarded the key, not the metal. So yes, they could build such a thing. But living in it would be slow suffering. It would hurt. In survival meant constant maintenance, padding changes, and impossible choices. Next, imagine squatting laundry in the slow bloom of sores under locked metal. How would you survive a single week? You squat over a slot, in cold stone, and hope Liquid splashes back linen padding. Soaks a smell rises. Sores start to bloom where metal bit flesh by dusk. Reenactors trying one on quit after hours swearing it chafes. It hurts. Imagine doing laundry with locked metal against your hips. You scrub linens in a tub while the belt catches water and drips onto your knees. Lice love moist, warm folds. Vermin crawl into seams and into the stuffing. Metal rusts near sweat and urine edges bite and tear its skin already tender. Your breath fogs in cold kitchens. Smoke stings your eyes while you work hard. Nobles sleep warmer, but loose privacy servants suffer different humiliations. Keys become household currency, traded like gossip and favors among women. You walk on chill cobbles, iron tapping a slow beat. By candlelight, the smell follows you like a rumor while you mind children and mend a skirt. Any determined attacker could cut straps or pick a simple lock. Keys get lost. Keys get hoarded keys. Transfer power. You still cook, carry buckets, spin, and tend children around harsh iron. Midwives and neighbors gossip in doorways, watching every limp. Sanitary cloths can be changed, but only with someone bearing a key. That makes chastity less about protection and more about control. It becomes a tool in bargaining marriage deals and household power. All while the fire burns low and a moth beats itself madly. So who actually pushed this idea hardest? Peasants or princes? And imagine a duke pacing a cold stone corridor by torchlight, a dowry contract, spread on a table, candles guttering. You're watching a man obsessed with lineage sweating over one question: whose child will inherit the lands? The reality was blunt and financial. Marriages came with detailed clauses about dowries, proof of paternity, and penalties for adultery. Lords didn't need theatrical iron, they built guarded apartments, posted ladies in waiting, and bolted doors at night. They bought walls, not waistbands. Accounts survive payments for extra guards, for keys, for locked chambers. Not a single line item for mass purchases of metal corsets. Imagine the pressure on a young bride. No privacy servants in the antechamber, footsteps muffled against stone. The smell of beeswax and stale smoke, every visit noted. Imagine his breath fogging the corridor, torch smoke clinging to tapestries. You feel the cold candles, gutter rooms remain expensive to heat. Brides slept with curtains drawn, servants waiting outside, every footstep recorded. Peasants had hearth privacy, yes, but no legal safety net whatsoever. Same job. Her reputation was currency as much as her dowry. Midwives, witnesses, even household inventories doubled as evidence. Surveillance, not spectacle, enforced fidelity. It cost less and worked better. The men with keys held power, gossip, and contract clauses did the rest. That's the human part. Control felt physical, intimate, and humiliating. Lords traded in certainty and shame, not clanking hardware. But the obsession didn't end with castle walls. Sermons and saints would soon translate that sexual fear into a moral economy. And you kneel in a confession stall, candle, guttering incense sour in the cold stone. A worn manual lies open on the priest's bench. Neat lists of sins and penances for fornication, fornicio, adultery, the usual catalog. The church sold rules and remedies the way fairs sold relics. Each cure a little economy of shame. Pilgrims queued to kiss a saint's bone, and at home women swallowed legends about virgin martyrs whose purity made altars glow. The moral market thrived: confessions, indulgences, relics, public penances, transactional holiness. But here's the practical truth: no canon law ever ordered iron underwear. Clergy who cared about doctrine often rolled their eyes at those stories. They mocked the tall tales in sermons, calling them comic or monstrous diversions. Fear worked better in heads than on hips. Priests learned to weaponize anxiety, paint hell vivid, promise absolution cheap. And people paid with reputation, dowries, and daily liberty. For women, the ritual weight was real: watchful households, chaperones, locked rooms, gossip like a visible scar. Still, physical chains were rare. Yet locks and keys mattered in quieter ways. The clink of a key at a lady's door could control rooms better than plates of iron. How secure were those doors really? Imagine your breath fogging the chapel smoke and candlelight in your eyes. Noble beds were colder, castles traded warmth for drafty grandeur. Peasants slept nearer the hearth, waking from smoke. Choked insomnia, exhausted. You learned to bar gossip like a door, servants kept watch. Not very, but the real lock was shame. And that could be paid. And you hold the miniature padlock in your hand, cold and ridiculous compared to the fear it promised. Power fits in your palm. These little warded locks, common on caskets and purses in the late 15th and 16th centuries, show a locksmith's craft, tiny bittings, a spring a bolt that moves when the right key turns. Mechanically, yes, you could bolt that onto a belt, but the reality is gritty. You smell tallow smoke, damp wool, and the chill of stone. Nobles sleep warmer, peasants wake shivering and keyless. It hurts always. The iron would bite skin, leather would chafe sweat, would pool where metal met flesh, and a simple warded lock could be picked in minutes by someone who knew keys. Imagine a candlelit chamber with keys jingling on a belt. Whoever keeps the key controls the body. That is the human cost. A husband, a steward, a jealous suitor, even a corrupt guard possession equals power. Keys become currency. Withheld traded used to coerce silence or extract dowries, proof of ownership more than protection. The atmosphere is cold stone, and muffled breath a soft turning of a key that decides someone's movement for the day. Theft threats and petty cruelty ride the same mechanism as security. Locks promise safety. They also promise leverage. You can't see the pressure, but you feel it in the tightening of a strap and the hush that follows. And you step into a 19th century cabinet of curiosities. Gaslight throws hard gold on iron, labeled medieval with neat copper plate, and belts gleam like trophies under glass. The room smells of oil and old wood. Visitors lean forward, whispers hushing the clink. But the reality is blunt. Many of those gleaming belts aren't medieval at all. Later major museums quietly redated dozens of examples to the 1800s. A lie sold. Showmen discovered a hot market, fear packaged as artifact. Traveling fairs took the props on tour, and penny gapers paid to be scandalized. Forgers learned the vocabulary of the past. Buckles, rivets of fake provenance, scrawled on a slip of paper. The crowd wanted cruelty and mystery, so vendors obliged. Think of it as smoky fairground. A hawker cutting a ribbon, a woman gasping at a lock she never wore. That human hunger matters. It made myth into commodity. Craftsmen could make convincing hardware. Storytellers supplied the context. Sellers made money off shame and a roaring appetite for lurid stories. The weirdest twist is who later adopted the theater. Doctors, moralizers in white coats, started selling medical devices, citing a new threat to health and civilization. The spectacle went clinical. What began as a prop turned into patent medicine, and then the trade changed faces. Imagine you breathe warm candles, smoke your breath fogging glass. Nobles stroke shiny buckles. Peasants speculate, whispering about sin. Fear cost them sleep coins and a little dignity. Doctors dressed the show in white, added authority and bills. Wow. Next, the same drama fuels modern scams. Picture a Victorian shop window at dusk. Catalogs lay open, showing belts, gloves, and tiny spiked rings. They were sold as health devices and moral appliances. You could buy one from a catalog like a corset. Reformers flogged purity in pamphlets and at lectures. Doctors warned that solitary vice caused sores, decay, and madness. The diagnosis was neat touch equals infection equals ruin. So manufacturers answered with brass, leather, and teeth. Some devices were truly cruel. Rings studded with spikes, belts lined with points. Others were padded, strapped, and patent. Marked with proud numbers. They really existed. Imagine the cold breath of candle smoke as shopkeepers closed up. Nobles bought discreetly. Poor lads got infection and ruin. Same story. Ouch. And to sell them, retailers rewrote history. Boxes were stamped medieval and flourished type to sanctify shame. Shame laundered into tradition. Newspapers ran lurid engravings of chastity gear and ruined youths. Prints turned fear into folklore. Court cases, medical reports, and patent filings piled up. Then come the human cost, sores that festered under leather, ulcers that bled. Infection crept from a chafed groove into bone and blood. Sepsis followed. Hospitals smelled of carbolic and fear, not sanctity. Victorian surgeons wrote circulatory horrors that made headlines. But the irony is sharp. Medieval ness sold the panic. Newspapers and prints fixed the image in popular memory, and so the belt became both product and parable. But these loud sales were only part of the story. Next, well, count the quieter cages, walls, watchers, and deals. Imagine a night so quiet. The click of a latch sounds like thunder. Cold stone, flickering candle, and the whispered root of the watch. In this world, chastity was less about iron and more about eyes. You count the actual bar's guardianship laws, Dowry leverage can vent walls. Add curfews, gossip networks that know every bedtime and midwives' oaths. Communities policed bodies through surveillance and public sanction. The punishments were brutal but rarely required iron. Beatings, forced marriages, property loss, exile, social ruin followed. It hurt. Imagine a widow watched by her late husband's kin. They kept keys to her doorway and power over her future. Convents offered sanctuary, but also strict enclosure and vows. Midwives swore secrecy, yet their gossip could ruin reputations. Shame not steal often enforced virginity more reliably. Still, locks mattered, because whoever held a key held life. Power migrated to guardians and husbands, not forged iron. You can hear keys clink like coins at a bargaining table. Women counted dowries and watched smiles for hidden promises. In kitchens, midwives' whispers could save or damn a woman. Watchmen paced roofs while neighbors traded rumors under eaves. You smell wood, smoke stew, and the metallic tang of fear. You feel cold breath fogging candlelight, candle smoke, and soot on skin. Nobles warmed by hearths, peasants woke with frozen feet and hunger. Yet, even with all this social steel, something else changed. That is precisely when merchants and showmen stepped in. With so much control already, how did the belt finally lose its shine? And you stand in a dim gallery glass case marked medieval, catching the light. Later, a curator whispers the tag is wrong. It's 19th century. Scholars publish papers, forgery lists grow longer every year. Feminist historians cut the Crusader fantasy to ribbons. Evidence collapses under the weight of research and archives. But the image refuses to leave. It sticks. It flatters modern superiority and sells drama in equal measure. You see it in films, the clanging prop, the comic gag, or in a cold stone church, a clichid woodcut haunting sermon margins. Cosplay photos gleam, on feeds clickbait headlines scream, medieval secrets. You can almost smell the gaslight in auction rooms and the oil on museum labels being rubbed clean to make a show. Showmen sold spectacle, health reformers sold shame as science. The real objects that existed are boring tiny padlocks, purse fittings, trivets. The fantasy is not about metallurgy. It's about feeling clever and horrified at once. That feeling pays. It funds documentaries, museum traffic, and late-night sketches. Imagine cold breath fogging a chapel, smoke clinging to rafters. Peasants huddle near a tiny trivet, while nobles dine in colder rooms. You feel exhaustion, closeness, the danger of infected candles. The irony stings. Wealth buys ornament, not warmth. People cough anyway. Think of modern heating bills and clickbait selling moral panic. Reality. So ask yourself, what scandal will medieval fashion justify next for your feed? Step back. What does this obsession reveal about our world now? The answer is uglier than you expect, and you hear a key turn in a cold stone room by candlelight. It sounds like a verdict. Across centuries, the click feels the same, fear packaged as protection. In medieval tales, that meant iron and rivets, a promise to keep bodies pure by force. Today, the packaging changed. Software, straps, apps, glossy promises sold online. Someone profits. Markets prove it. Companies sell control as comfort, and demand keeps rising. But the bodies paying for that comfort live with real costs. Chafed skin infections, sleepless fear, the private terror of someone else holding the key. Imagine the hush of a household where a key is wagged like proof of safety. The candles gutter. Cold breath hangs in the air. You learn to speak softer, to walk quieter, to hide the way you breathe. Protection becomes a transaction. Pay for the device, accept the surveillance, hand over autonomy. The power doesn't sit with the wearer. It sits with whoever keeps the key, the password, the pledge. That's the human angle. Safety promises that become tools of control. The atmosphere is clinical and intimate. At once, metal rusting at the edges, stitched leather stiffening with sweat, gossip circling like a draft under doors. The sales pitch is old as fear and shiny as a new app. So when someone offers to lock something, for your good, pause. Ask who benefits. Ask who gets blamed if the lock cuts or if someone else holds the key. Next time someone waves a key, ask who's really being kept safe.